The Mafia boss swore he'd never love. Until what she did on Christmas night, he craved for more. Snow clung to Rogelio's shoulders as he stood in the doorway of Pacific Garden Mission, chest rising fast, breath tight. His dark coat was too expensive for this place. Tattoos showed on his forearms beneath rolled sleeves. His eyes searched the room, wild, urgent, like a man who had already lost too much. Minnie turned toward him. The volunteer apron over her simple sweater was dusted with flour. Relief crossed her face before she could stop it. Around them, the room went still. Plates froze mid-air. Voices fell silent. Rogelio spoke, low and raw. I almost didn't come. I almost walked away, because people from my world threatened you tonight, and everything I've ever known tells me that loving you is the most dangerous thing I could do. Minnie stepped closer. Her hands found his, steady and warm. Then tell me the truth. Are you here to push me away? Or are you here to let me choose you? Christmas lights glowed through the windows behind them. His answer stayed locked in his chest. How did a man who built his power on never loving anyone end up here, risking everything for a woman who should never exist in his world? If you feel the tension already, stay with this story. Welcome to DEE'S Romance Stories, where forbidden love ignites, dangerous hearts collide, and desire defies every rule. Stay with me, because tonight you'll witness a story that will make your heart race and your imagination burn. Don't just watch, feel it. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and let yourself be swept into a world where every choice could change everything. Rogelio ruled Chicago from above the magnificent Mile, in a glass and steel penthouse that looked down on a city that obeyed him. The windows ran wall to wall, showing traffic like moving veins of light. Everything in the space was chosen with care: dark wood floors, clean lines, no personal clutter. Power lived here. Comfort was allowed. Warmth was not. Each morning began the same way. He rose before sunrise, worked out until his muscles burned, showered in silence, dressed in tailored black or charcoal. His phone filled with updates before his first coffee. Territory held. Rivals quiet. Money moving. Problems handled. Men waited for his words and acted without question. When Rogelio spoke, rooms listened. Fear followed him without effort. Respect followed faster. He accepted both as tools, nothing more. He told himself he did not need anything else. That belief had been forged long before the city ever knew his name. Rogelio grew up the son of immigrants who worked until their hands cracked. His father taught him how to stand straight and speak little. His mother taught him how to endure. One night, when Rogelio was 10, everything broke. A robbery gone wrong. His father stepping in front of his mother. A knife. Blood on the floor of a small apartment. His father dying with his hand still reaching for the woman he loved. His mother survived that night, but she never truly lived again. Grief hollowed her out. She faded over years, working less, speaking less, smiling not at all. By the time Rogelio was 15, she was gone too, her heart giving up quietly. Standing at her grave, alone, Rogelio learned his final lesson. Love made people weak. Love took what it wanted and left nothing behind. Power, he decided, was the only thing that stayed. That was the vow he made at 15. Never love. Never be vulnerable. Never allow someone close enough to destroy him. He kept that promise with discipline. Chicago's underworld became a system he understood better than emotions. He built his influence piece by piece, never rushing, never trusting words over results. He learned how to read men by the way they stood, how they avoided eye contact, how they touched their weapons. He rewarded loyalty. He crushed betrayal. His name spread quietly, then firmly, until it no longer needed explanation. His body became a record of that rise. Tattoos covered his arms and chest, inked with care and memory. Dates marked battles survived. Symbols honored men who died under his command. Lines and shapes formed an armor he carried on his skin, a reminder of where he came from and what it cost. He never regretted them. Pain had purpose. His days ran on precision. Meetings in private rooms. Decisions made without hesitation. Violence used only when it served a clear end. He did not enjoy it. He did not avoid it. It was simply part of the structure he maintained. At night, the penthouse stayed quiet. No laughter echoed through it. No photos sat on shelves. He slept alone, rested alone, woke alone. On the rare nights he shared his bed, the women never stayed. Names were unnecessary. Attachment was forbidden. He was polite, distant, untouchable. Loneliness existed, but he treated it like a background noise. Something you stop noticing if you refuse to acknowledge it. Rogelio believed his isolation made him strong. Without ties, he had no weaknesses. Without love, he had no leverage against him. Every decision came from logic. Every move had distance built in. That belief had never been challenged. Until cracks began forming in places he did not expect. At the penthouse windows, he sometimes stood longer than necessary, watching the city he controlled. The lights were beautiful from that height, clean and far away. He told himself this view was enough. He had everything men like him were supposed to want. Still, there were moments when the silence pressed harder than usual. When memories slipped through his defenses without permission. His father's last breath. His mother's empty stare. The promise he made to survive no matter the cost. He always pushed those thoughts away. Feelings were dangerous. They blurred judgment. They led to mistakes. Rogelio did not make mistakes. That certainty had kept him alive. It had built his empire. It had protected him for years. But certainty, like power, could be challenged. And when it would not come from another man with a gun, or a rival reaching for his territory. It would come from something far more unfamiliar to him. From a feeling he had buried so deeply he believed it no longer existed. Minnie Branco began her mornings with music before the city fully woke. Soft records played in her modest Lincoln Park apartment as pale light slipped through thin curtains. The space was small but lived in, plants near the window, second-hand furniture, shelves stacked with sheet music and children's drawings. Nothing matched perfectly, but everything felt cared for. She walked along the lakefront most days before work, wrapped in a scarf, hands tucked into her coat pockets. Lake Michigan stretched wide and honest beside her, waves breaking in steady rhythm. The walk grounded her. It reminded her that even when life felt heavy, it still moved forward. Minnie grew up in a quiet town in Wisconsin, where neighbors waved and winters felt endless. Her childhood had been warm and ordinary until illness entered her home. Her younger brother, Eli, was diagnosed with leukemia when she was 15. Hospital rooms replaced playgrounds. Beeping machines replaced laughter. Minnie learned how to hold his hand through pain she could not take away. Eli died a year later. Minnie was 16. The loss carved a hollow place inside her that never fully closed. But instead of hardening her, it opened something else. She saw how small moments mattered. How a song could calm fear. How presence could ease suffering even when cures failed. That understanding shaped her future. Minnie chose music therapy because she believed healing was more than medicine. At the University of Chicago Medical Center, she worked with children whose bodies were tired long before their time. She brought guitars into rooms that smelled of antiseptic. She sang softly when words failed. She watched shoulders relax, breath slow, eyes brighten, even if only for minutes. She treated every child like they mattered deeply, because they did. Her work days were long but fulfilling. After leaving the hospital, she often headed to the Pilsen Community Center, where she volunteered teaching music to kids whose families struggled to get by. She never spoke down to them. She listened. She encouraged. She laughed easily, even when days were hard. On certain evenings, she joined groups that served meals near Union Station. She knew people by name. She remembered who liked extra bread, who preferred tea, who needed quiet conversation more than food. She believed dignity was not optional. It was a right. Minnie moved through the world with an open heart. Some called her too trusting. Others said she was naive. She accepted those labels without offense. She knew the world could be cruel. She had seen it firsthand. But she refused to believe cruelty was the whole truth. Her personality filled rooms without effort. She smiled often, but it was not forced. It came from a place of genuine care. When she listened fully. When she spoke, her words were simple and sincere. Even grief did not harden her. At night, she returned to her apartment, cooked simple meals, graded session notes, and sometimes cried quietly when exhaustion caught up to her. She missed her brother most in those moments. She missed the version of herself that existed before loss. But she never wished the pain away. It had shaped her into someone who understood others deeply. Music stayed with her always. Old vinyl records spun as she cleaned. She sang along softly, off-key at times, laughing at herself. She believed imperfections made things real. Her philosophy was simple, shaped by loss and love. Everyone had light in them. Some people buried it to survive. Others had it taken from them too early. But it was always there, waiting to be seen. She believed connection brought that light back. Minnie did not chase recognition. She did not want wealth or power. She wanted moments that mattered. A child smiling through pain. A stranger feeling seen. A quiet understanding shared between two people. She never imagined her belief would be tested by someone who lived in a world so far removed from her own. To Minnie, Chicago was a city of people, not hierarchies. She saw beauty in its flaws. She saw hope in unlikely places. She believed that even those who seemed hardened beyond reach were shaped by something once soft. She did not know that her belief, so gentle and firm, would soon collide with a man who had built his life on denying it. And when that collision came, it would challenge everything both of them thought they understood about strength, survival, and love. The air was sharp that November evening, cold enough to sting the skin. Minnie locked the doors of the Pilsen Community Center later than usual, her arms full of donated instruments. Laughter from the children still echoed in her ears as she stepped into the dim street. The block was quiet, street lights humming, the city settling into night. That was when raised voices cut through the calm. Across the street, 3 men stood around a fourth who was backed against a brick wall. Their coats were dark, their posture controlled, their movements too deliberate to be random. Minnie froze, heart thudding. The man trapped between them looked frightened, his hands raised, words spilling out too fast to make sense. She understood danger. She had seen it in hospital rooms, in desperate faces. This was different, but no less real. Before she could talk herself out of it, Minnie reached into her coat pocket and pulled out her phone. Her hands shook as she hit record. She stepped forward, her boots loud against the pavement. "Stop," she said, voice thin but clear. "Whatever this is, you need to stop." The men turned toward her, surprise flashing across their faces. One took a step closer, his expression hard. Minnie swallowed, her pulse racing, but she did not move back. "I'm recording," she said, lifting the phone higher. "You don't want this." Her breath came fast. Fear pressed against her chest, but something stronger held her in place. The belief that someone had to say no. Parked down the street, Rogelio watched through the windshield of his car. He had come to oversee a routine exchange. Nothing unusual. Nothing personal. Yet the moment the woman stepped into view, his attention sharpened. She was not dressed for confrontation. No armor. No arrogance. Just a scarf, a worn coat, and courage that did not belong in this situation. He saw the tremor in her hand. He saw the resolve in her eyes. Most people looked at his men and saw only threat. This woman saw a choice. Rogelio felt something shift inside him, subtle but unsettling. Her faith that goodness would prevail was almost offensive to everything he knew. And yet, it held his gaze. "Enough," he said into his phone. The command traveled fast. His men hesitated, then stepped back. One muttered under his breath, displeased but obedient. The man against the wall fled without looking back. Minnie lowered her phone slowly, her knees weak with relief. She looked around, confused, until her eyes landed on Rogelio as he stepped out of the car. He moved with calm authority, presence heavy in the air. She did not flinch. Instead, she walked toward him. "Thank you," she said, voice steadier now. "For doing the right thing." The words landed harder than any accusation could have. Her eyes met his, bright and unguarded. She was not thanking him out of fear. She meant it. Rogelio studied her face, searching for manipulation, for calculation. He found none. Only sincerity. "You shouldn't step into things you don't understand," he said, tone controlled. "Someone had to," she replied. People matter. No one had spoken to him like that in years. Not without wanting something. Not without trembling submission. A crack formed in his certainty, thin but real. As she turned to leave, Rogelio felt an impulse he did not recognize. Interest, he told himself. Strategic curiosity. She had interfered in his business. That alone made her worth watching. Yet as he drove away, her words stayed with him. People matter. The phrase followed him back to his penthouse, echoing against the walls he had built so carefully. He replayed the moment again and again. The way she stood her ground. The way she looked at him without judgment. It unsettled him. Rogelio tried to frame the encounter as a calculation. She worked at the community center. She had influence in that neighborhood. Keeping her safe, keeping her favorable, made sense. But deep down, another truth pressed forward. Something more dangerous than strategy. He had seen a woman who believed in light without knowing who he was. He had felt seen in a way that stripped away his armor. That night, sleep came late. For the first time in years, Rogelio questioned the vow he made at 15. Not because he wanted to break it, but because someone had unknowingly tested it. And the fortress he trusted so completely had begun to show a fracture he could not ignore. Rogelio told himself the first meeting after Pilsen was coincidence. He saw Minnie at Millennium Park, during her lunch break, standing near Cloud Gate, with a paper bag in her hands. Tourists laughed and pointed at their reflections, phones raised. Minnie watched them with a small smile, as if their joy mattered to her. Rogelio stood at a distance, hands in his coat pockets, unnoticed. He did not approach. Not yet. The second meeting felt less accidental. He walked past the park again 2 days later, timing his schedule around the hour he knew she took lunch. When she noticed him, surprise crossed her face, followed by recognition. "You," she said, smiling. "From the other night?" "Yes," he replied. "You're brave." She shrugged. "I was scared." But being scared doesn't mean doing nothing. They spoke only a few minutes. About the cold. About how busy the park stayed even in November. When she left, Rogelio stood there longer than necessary, watching the place where she had been. The third time, he found her at the Art Institute of Chicago. She sat on a bench, sketchbook balanced on her knees, pencil moving fast as she studied an impressionist painting. Her brow furrowed in focus. Rogelio slowed his steps without thinking. "You draw," he said. She looked up, startled, then smiled. "Badly. But it helps me see." He sat beside her, the museum quiet around them. She told him about the children she worked with, how drawing helped some of them express what words could not. He listened more than he spoke. When she asked about his work, he paused. Business, he said carefully. She did not press. She accepted the answer as it was, and that unsettled him more than questions would have. They began to walk together after that. Along the Chicago River walk, bundled against the cold, breath visible between words. The river moved slow and dark beneath them. Minnie spoke about music, about how certain sounds made people feel safe. Rogelio spoke in pieces, offering fragments of himself without names or details. You don't talk about yourself much, she said once, gently. I've learned not to, he replied. She considered him for a moment. Everyone has light in them, she said. Even in the deepest darkness. The words hit him harder than he expected. He stopped walking. She turned to face him, concern in her eyes. Did I say something wrong? No, he said quietly. You said too much. That night, Rogelio admitted the truth to himself. This was not strategy. He was not observing her for leverage or control. He was courting her. The realization unsettled him. He had never cared who someone was before. What they loved. What made them cry. He had kept his world separate, clean of emotional risk. Yet here he was, learning the small details of Minnie Branco. He learned she loved vintage records, especially old soul music that crackled before the first note. He learned she made terrible coffee and drank it anyway, laughing at herself. He learned she cried during animated movies and never apologized for it. She learned he preferred silence in the mornings. That he noticed everything. That he carried weight he never named. Each meeting drew him closer despite his effort to keep distance. He found excuses to see her that sounded reasonable even to him. A walk. A shared meal. A visit to a gallery. Attachment crept in quietly. At night, alone in his penthouse, Rogelio argued with himself. He reminded himself who he was. What loving someone cost him once before. He told himself Minnie saw a version of him that did not exist. She saw light, because she wanted to believe in it. But with every meeting, that excuse weakened. Minnie did not try to change him. She did not demand confessions or promises. She simply saw him, and in doing so, made him question the armor he wore so proudly. One evening, as they stood by the river, Minnie looked at him and smiled. Not the polite smile she gave strangers, but something warmer. You're not what you think you are, she said. Rogelio felt the ground shift beneath him. The man he was told him to walk away. The man she saw stayed rooted in place. For the first time since he was 15, Rogelio felt fear that had nothing to do with threats or power. Fear of wanting something he had sworn never to need. And as winter edged closer, he realized the most dangerous territory he had ever entered was not the streets of Chicago. It was the space Minnie was slowly, gently opening inside him. December arrived in Chicago, with a sharp breath of cold and a softening of edges. Lights climbed the trees along Michigan Avenue, wrapping the city in white and gold. Shop windows glowed late into the night. At Maggie Daley Park, Laughter rose from the ice as skaters circled under strings of bulbs, hands linked, cheeks red from the cold. Rogelio watched the city change from behind tinted glass, feeling the shift inside himself grow stronger with every passing day. December made everything harder. He saw Minnie more often now. Or maybe he noticed her more. She seemed to slip into his days naturally, fitting into spaces he never meant to open. Coffee before work. Walks after dark. Quiet dinners where conversation lingered longer than planned. With each meeting, his inner conflict sharpened. He was careful with her, but not enough. Minnie was not blind. She noticed how people stepped aside when he entered a room. How waiters straightened. How men in expensive coats nodded with respect that carried fear beneath it. She saw the penthouse without asking to see it, understood its cost without him explaining. She never asked for luxury, but she did not pretend it wasn't there. "You live like someone who's used to being obeyed," she said once, not accusing, just observing. Rogelio did not deny it. Minnie fell for him slowly, thoughtfully. Not for his money or presence, but for the man who listened when she spoke. For the way he remembered small details. For the moments when his guard dropped and something softer appeared beneath it. Still, questions gathered in her eyes. One evening, he took her to Navy Pier. The lake was dark and wide, the air biting. Winter fireworks bloomed above the water, color breaking the black sky. Minnie watched in silence, breath caught, light reflecting in her eyes. When the last echo faded, she turned to him. "Who are you really?" she asked. The question was simple. Honest. Impossible. Rogelio's jaw tightened. "I'm someone who has done things you wouldn't understand." Minnie didn't look away. "That doesn't scare me," she said. "What scares me is not knowing." He tried again, clumsier this time. "I'm not a good man, Minnie." She smiled gently. "My mother used to say people aren't good or bad. They are choices, repeated over time. People can change. Redemption isn't about being perfect. It's about effort." He shook his head. "I told you I don't do love." Her voice stayed calm. "I'm more interested in what your actions are saying." Those words followed him into the week before Christmas. While the city leaned into celebration, Rogelio's other world tightened. Reports came in from the south and west. A rival organization from Detroit was moving closer, testing borders that had held for years. Meetings grew tense. Messages turned sharper. Intelligence confirmed what he feared. Planned aggression. A push that could tip into open conflict if mishandled. The old Rogelio prepared for war without emotion. Territory mattered. Reputation mattered more. But now, every decision ran through a new filter. Minnie. He thought of her walking home after work. Of her stopping to talk to strangers. Of how visible she was, how open. The risk pressed against him in ways he did not know how to resolve. Then she asked him to volunteer. "Christmas Eve," she said, eyes bright. "Pacific Garden Mission. We're short on hands." The invitation landed heavy. In his world, Christmas Eve was a vulnerability. Reduced cruise. Increased movement. Bad timing. The rational answer was no. The new answer surprised him. Yes, he said. Minnie smiled, delighted. 7 o'clock. Don't be late. After they parted, Rogelio stood alone on the sidewalk, breath fogging the air. He told himself it was a mistake. He told himself he could handle both worlds for one night. He scheduled the Detroit meeting early. One last attempt to settle things without escalation. He planned to be done by 6. Plenty of time. On Christmas Eve afternoon, the loop felt tense beneath its decorations. Traffic crawled. Bells rang from storefronts. Inside a private room above a restaurant, the meeting turned cold. What should have been negotiation sharpened into threat. The Detroit lieutenant leaned back, smug, a thin smile on his face. He slid photos across the table. Minnie. Outside the hospital. By the lake. Laughing. Seems like the mighty Rogelio Nesmith has found himself a weakness, the man said. Something inside Rogelio snapped free from restraint. This was not the clean anger he knew. This was raw, protective, fast. His voice dropped, deadly calm. You don't want to go down this road. The lieutenant laughed. Love makes men careless. Gives enemies leverage. In that moment, Rogelio's lifelong belief stood proven. Love made you vulnerable. Love put targets on the people you cared about. The choice crystallized with brutal clarity. Keep Minnie close and make her a danger. Or push her away and keep her safe. The meeting ended without resolution. Rogelio left the building and drove into Christmas Eve traffic, jaw clenched, mind racing. He checked the time. Late. The city moved slow, cars inching forward under strings of lights. His phone buzzed with updates, with warnings, with demands. He ignored them. The weight settled fully now. His enemies were right. Minnie was his weakness. But she was also something else. She was the first person who had ever looked at him and asked who he was, not what he controlled. The first person who believed change was possible without proof. By the time he reached the mission, snow clung to his coat, breath coming hard as he pushed through the door. Minnie stood inside, apron on, smile fading as doubt crept in. She had been watching the door for 4 to 5 minutes. When she saw him, relief hit her face so fast it hurt to witness. You came, she said, voice soft. I almost didn't, he admitted. I almost walked away, because that would be safer. For you. He told her everything. Who he was. What he controlled. The threats. The danger. He waited for fear. For distance. For proof his walls were justified. Instead, Minnie asked, Are you telling me this to push me away, or to let me make an informed choice? The question stripped him bare. I want you, he said. I want to deserve you. I want to be the man you see when you look at me. She chose him. Fully. Clear-eyed. In that choice, something inside Rogelio shifted forever. Christmas Eve afternoon settled over the loop with a forced cheer that did nothing to soften the tension beneath it. Garlands hung from lampposts. Office workers hurried with wrapped boxes tucked under their arms. Bells rang every time a shop door opened. On the street, the city smiled. Behind closed doors, it did not. Rogelio arrived early to the meeting, as he always did. The private room above the restaurant was clean, neutral, chosen for discretion. A long table. Low lighting. No windows. He took the seat that gave him a clear view of the door, and rested his forearms on the table, tattoos visible, posture calm. This was supposed to be simple. The Detroit group had been pressing south for weeks. Small moves. Quiet tests. Today was meant to set boundaries. A conversation between men who understood the cost of crossing lines. The lieutenant arrived with two others. Younger than Rogelio, but trying hard to look seasoned. His smile was thin, his eyes sharp. They shook hands, exchanged formal words, and took their seats. At first, the meeting followed the expected path. Territory discussed without raised voices. Numbers mentioned, then corrected. Long pauses used as pressure. Rogelio stayed measured, controlled, every word deliberate. Then the tone shifted. The lieutenant leaned back, folding his arms. "Chicago's changed," he said casually. "You've changed." Rogelio lifted his gaze. "Be careful." The lieutenant chuckled. "No offense. Just noticing patterns." He slid a manila envelope across the table. Rogelio did not touch it. "If you have something to say, say it." The lieutenant opened the envelope himself, and spread the contents out slowly, enjoying the moment. Photographs. Minnie outside the hospital, scarf wrapped tight, smiling at someone unseen. Minnie by the lake, hair caught by the wind. Minnie carrying food containers near Union Station. Minnie unlocking the door to her apartment building. Rogelio's breath slowed. His body went still. "You've done your homework," he said evenly. "Oh, we did more than that," the lieutenant replied. "We know her routines. Where she works. Where she volunteers. Cute thing, really. Always helping people." The room felt smaller. "Seems like the mighty Rogelio Nesmith has found himself a weakness," the lieutenant said, sneer curling his mouth. Rogelio felt the change hit him like a physical force. This was not the cold anger he had mastered over years. This was fast and hot, tearing through him without permission. His hands curled into fists beneath the table. His jaw locked. He pictured Minnie's face when she laughed. The way she trusted easily. The way she stepped into danger for strangers. His voice dropped, quiet and precise. "You don't want to go down this road." The lieutenant's smile widened. "That's the problem. We already are." The threat hung there, clear without being spoken. They would not touch her yet. Not unless they needed to. But they could. And they wanted him to know that. Rogelio leaned forward slightly. "If anything happens to her, there will be consequences you cannot imagine." The lieutenant shrugged. "That's the price of attachment. Love gives people ammunition." There it was. The truth Rogelio had built his life around, spoken by someone else without ceremony. Love makes you vulnerable. The meeting dissolved after that. No agreement reached. No peace secured. Just a warning wrapped in smiles and false respect. Rogelio stood and left without another word. The hallway outside felt too bright, too loud. He took the stairs 2 at a time, his thoughts moving faster than his steps. His phone buzzed with missed messages. He ignored them all. In the car, he gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles whitened. This was the moment he had always prepared for. The proof that his vow at 15 had been right. Caring for someone gave enemies leverage. It put blood on innocent hands. He pulled into traffic, Christmas lights blurring past the windshield. Cars crawled, horns sharp and impatient. Time slipped away with every red light. He checked the clock. Late. Minnie would be at the mission by now. She would be watching the door, telling herself not to worry. Trusting him. The thought cut deeper than any threat. His mind raced through options. Security details. Moving her. Cutting contact. Ending things cleanly, coldly, before she became collateral damage. Push her away. Protect her from himself. It was the logical choice. The safe one. Yet the image of her face, when she said his actions mattered, rose up, refusing to be dismissed. The way she believed in change without guarantees. The way she looked at him, not as a boss, but as a man. Traffic slowed again. He swore under his breath. His fortress, built over decades, began to crack under the weight of one truth he could no longer deny. Minnie was his weakness. But she was also the first thing that made him want to be more than what he was. The realization hit hard. All his life, he had defined strength as distance. Control. Isolation. But sitting there in traffic, heart pounding, he felt a different kind of strength pulling at him. The courage to choose honesty over protection through lies. The courage to risk change. He reached the mission street and parked without care. Snow had begun to fall again, dusting his coat as he stepped out. His chest felt tight, breath uneven. Inside, warmth and noise greeted him. Volunteers moved quickly. Laughter mixed with exhaustion. And there she was. Minnie stood near the serving tables, apron on, eyes lifting toward the door as if she had been willing it to open. When she saw him, relief washed over her face so clearly it hurt to witness. He crossed the room in long strides, stopping in front of her, suddenly unsure of what to say. Power meant nothing here. Titles meant nothing. He was just a man who was late and afraid. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't want to leave you waiting." She smiled, soft and real. "You came." The words broke something open inside him. "I almost didn't," he admitted. "Because that would have been safer." "For who?" she asked gently. "For you." He took a breath and told her the truth. All of it. The meeting. The photos. The threat. Who he really was. As he spoke, he waited for fear to replace her warmth. For her to step back. for confirmation that his walls had been necessary all along. Instead, she listened. Fully. Without interruption. When he finished, she asked the question that changed everything. Are you telling me this to push me away, or to let me make an informed choice? The distinction cut clean and deep. He realized then that protection through silence was still control. That real care meant trust. What do you want? She asked. Not what you think you should want. What you actually want. His voice came out rough. I want you in my life. I want to deserve you. Minnie reached for his hand, grounding him. Then don't decide for me out of fear. In that moment, the weight shifted. Yes, his enemies were right. Minnie was his weakness. But she was also his chance. Not to escape consequences. Not to erase his past. But to become someone who chose differently moving forward. The fortress he had trusted all his life did not fall apart that night. It opened. And for the first time, Rogelio stepped forward without knowing what the outcome would be, choosing love not as a risk to manage, but as a truth to face. Minnie had been watching the door for 45 minutes. She told herself it didn't mean anything at first. People were late on Christmas Eve. Traffic slowed. Plans shifted. She adjusted the apron around her waist and smiled at a woman asking for extra bread, her voice warm and steady even as her eyes drifted back to the entrance. 7 o'clock had come and gone. The mission buzzed with movement. Volunteers carried trays of food. Laughter rose in short bursts, then faded into tired sighs. Someone bumped into Minnie's shoulder and apologized. She waved it off easily. Her smile stayed in place, but it had begun to tighten. She checked the time again. 7:30. Her heart sank a little, then corrected itself. Rogelio had said he would come. He had said yes without hesitation. That had mattered to her. She reminded herself who he was. A man with responsibilities she didn't fully understand. A man whose life did not run on the same simple tracks as hers. 8 o'clock approached. Doubt crept in quietly, not as panic, but as questions she didn't want to ask. Had she misunderstood him? Had she wanted this too much? She felt a familiar ache, one she had known before, the ache of believing in someone who might not be able to meet her where she stood. She turned back to the serving tables, focusing on the work. Hands needed meals. Conversations needed patience. This place mattered, whether he came or not. But her eyes kept drifting to the door. At 8 o'clock, she felt embarrassment rise, sharp and unwelcome. Other volunteers glanced at her with gentle curiosity. No one asked where he was. They didn't need to. Minnie reached up and touched the knot of her apron, fingers lingering there longer than necessary. She told herself she would wait a few more minutes. Just a few. If he didn't come, she would leave quietly. No scene. No questions. Just acceptance. She stepped aside, the decision forming in her chest, disappointment settling in beside it. That was when the door flew open. Cold air rushed in first, sharp and sudden. Snow followed, dusting the floor. Heads turned. Rogelio stood in the doorway, coat darkened by snow, chest rising hard as if he'd run the whole way. His hair was damp, his breath uneven. He scanned the room with urgency until his eyes found hers. Relief hit Minnie so fast her knees weakened. He crossed the room in long strides, ignoring the stares, stopping only when he stood directly in front of her. Up close, she could see it clearly now. This powerful man looked lost. "I'm sorry," he said, voice rough. "I didn't mean to be late." She didn't scold him. She didn't ask questions. Her hand reached for his without thinking, fingers closing around his. "You came," she said softly. Something in his face broke open at the words. "I almost didn't," he admitted. "I almost walked away, because that would have been safer. For you. Not for me." The honesty stunned her into silence. He took a breath, steadying himself, then began to speak. He told her about the meeting. About the men from Detroit. About the photos. About the threat that had been placed in his hands like proof of his own failure. As he spoke, his voice stayed controlled, but she could hear the strain beneath it. This was not a story he was used to telling. This was not a side of himself he had ever offered anyone. "I control things in this city that operate outside the law," he said. "I have enemies who would use you against me." He waited for her to pull away. He waited for fear to rise in her eyes. He waited for confirmation that all his walls had been necessary. Minnie did none of those things. She listened. When he finished, the space between them felt charged, quiet in a way that made the sounds of the mission fade. She could feel his tension through their joined hands. "Are you telling me this to push me away?" she asked gently, "or to let me make an informed choice?" The question landed with force. Rogelio had faced threats, guns, betrayal. None of it compared to this moment. He realized the difference instantly. Pushing her away would be protection through control. Telling her the truth was trust. "I don't know how to protect you without losing you," he said. "That's not what I asked," she replied. "What do you want?" The simplicity of the question stripped away every excuse he had prepared. "I want you in my life," he said. "I want to deserve you. I want to be the man you see when you look at me." Minnie lifted her free hand and rested it against his face, her touch warm and grounding. Around them, the mission seemed to hold its breath. "I'm choosing you," she said. "Knowing who you are. Understanding the risks. Eyes wide open. I'm choosing you. Not a perfect version that doesn't exist, but you. Exactly as you are right now. Tattoos and empire and walls and all." Rogelio closed his eyes as the words sank in. No one had ever chosen him like this. Not with clarity. Not without illusions. Not without asking him to pretend. The power of it hit him all at once. Being fully seen. Fully known. Fully chosen. Something inside him shifted, deep and irreversible. They stood there for a moment longer, hands joined, before Minnie smiled and tugged gently. "Aprons," she said. "If you're staying." He nodded, unable to trust his voice. Side by side, they served dinner. Rogelio watched her move through the room, greeting people by name, offering warmth without pity. He followed her lead, awkward at first, then more sure. The work was simple. Honest. Somewhere between the 40th and 50th bowl of soup, he felt it happen. A quiet change. This connection. This service. This choice to stand here instead of somewhere darker. Minnie noticed his smile before he did. "That looks good on you," she said. After the last plate was cleared and the room settled into tired satisfaction, Minnie leaned against the counter beside him. "What happens now?" she asked. "With the people who threatened me?" "I handle it," he said. "But not the way I would have before." She studied him. "Choosing peace isn't weakness." He nodded slowly. "It's harder. It asks more." In the weeks that followed, Rogelio began the slow work of change. He shifted money into legitimate businesses. He strengthened community ties. He met threats with alliances instead of force. Resistance came from within his own organization. Doubt followed him home at night. Whenever it did, he remembered Christmas Eve. Minnie's choice. The feeling of serving soup instead of orders. Their relationship was not simple. Minnie set boundaries. She insisted on honesty. She wasn't naive about his world, but she chose to walk beside him anyway. 6 months later, they walked the lakefront trail in early spring, the city softer around them. "Transformation isn't about becoming different," Rogelio said. "It's about becoming more fully yourself." Minnie smiled. Strength means trusting someone with your need. A year after that Christmas Eve, his world looked different. Illegal operations shrank. Legitimate ones grew. His name began to mean something else. 14 months later, on a cold February evening, they stood outside the mission again. Rogelio handed Minnie a small box. Inside was a pendant. A musical note intertwined with a compass rose. "Music is you," he said. "The compass is me. You're my true north." It wasn't a promise of forever. It was a promise of intention. Minnie turned, letting him fasten it around her neck, tears in her eyes. "The most powerful act of love," she said, "is choosing each other every day." They stood there in the cold, warmth radiating between them. What Minnie did on Christmas Eve was choose him. Clear-eyed. Wholehearted. What Rogelio craved wasn't possession or control. It was the man he could become in her eyes. And every sunrise after that, every shared meal, every honest conversation, they chose again. They served dinner together that night, side by side, sleeves rolled up, volunteer aprons tied clumsily at their waists. Rogelio moved more slowly than Minnie, watching her before acting, letting her set the rhythm. She greeted each person as if they mattered deeply, not as a task, not as a number. She asked names. She remembered them. She knelt to speak to an elderly man eye to eye. She joked with a tired mother balancing 2 trays. She offered dignity without performance. Rogelio noticed everything. He noticed how people straightened when Minnie spoke to them, how shoulders eased. He noticed how she never rushed anyone, even when the line stretched long. He noticed how she touched hands briefly, grounding, human. No fear. No distance. Just presence. He handed out bowls of soup, one after another. 40 passed. Then 50. Somewhere between those two numbers, something shifted inside him. This was not charity. This was connection. This was choosing to stand here instead of behind guarded doors. This was offering something without taking control in return. This was a way of being he had never practiced. He felt it when Minnie glanced at him and smiled. "That looks good on you," she said quietly. He almost laughed, caught off guard by the warmth of it. For once, the smile that reached his face was not practiced or guarded. It was real. After the last tray was cleared and the room settled into tired calm, they stood near the sink, hands damp, shoulders brushing. Minnie looked at him, thoughtful. "What happens now?" she asked. "With the people who threatened me?" Rogelio did not look away. "I handle it," he said. "But not the way I would have before." She waited. "I ruled by fear," he continued. "It worked because everyone was afraid of losing something. Now I'm afraid of losing what matters." She nodded slowly. "Choosing peace isn't weakness." "No," he agreed. "It's harder. Violence is simple. Peace asks restraint. It asks patience. It asks strength every day." That night marked a beginning, not a solution. The weeks after Christmas Eve were not easy. Rogelio's world did not transform overnight. Change moved slowly, resisted loudly. He began shifting money into legitimate businesses, expanding operations that already existed on paper, but had never been priorities. Construction firms, logistics companies, property development, community centers that had long struggled suddenly found funding that came without strings. He started listening more. He started choosing negotiation where he once chose force. Detroit's pressure did not vanish, but he met it differently. Strategic alliances replaced threats. Shared interests replaced open conflict. The balance shifted without blood being spilled. Inside his own organization, resistance grew. Men questioned him openly. They said he was losing his edge. That he was getting soft. That the city would sense weakness. There were nights Rogelio believed them. He sat alone in his penthouse, staring at the lights below, wondering if he was dismantling the only thing that had ever kept him alive. He wondered if change was possible for someone like him, or if he was only pretending. In those moments, he remembered Christmas Eve. He remembered Minnie standing in a volunteer apron, choosing him with clarity. He remembered the feeling of handing out soup instead of orders. He remembered the calm that followed honesty. Love, he realized, was not comfort. It was accountability. Minnie held him to that. She set boundaries without apology. She insisted on honesty, even when it was uncomfortable. She asked questions he could not deflect. She listened without excusing. She did not demand perfection, but she demanded effort. Their relationship became a constant conversation. Values discussed. Fears named. Expectations stated clearly. They argued sometimes. They disagreed often, but they returned to the table each time, choosing to stay engaged. Minnie was not naive about his world. She did not pretend it could be erased. But she chose to walk alongside him, not behind him, not ahead of him. 6 months later, they walked the lakefront trail on a mild spring evening. The city felt different then. Softer. Less sharp. Joggers passed them. Cyclists called out warnings. The water reflected the fading sky. Rogelio told her about a non-profit partnership he was building. Job training for men coming out of prison. Real work. Real pay. A chance to start over. I used to think transformation meant becoming someone else, he said. Now I think it's becoming more fully yourself. Minnie smiled. Strength means having the courage to need someone and trust them with that need. He stopped walking and turned to her. I've spent my life building walls. I didn't realize they were a prison. She reached for his hand. I don't need to complete you, she said. I just want to walk beside you. They stood there as the sun dipped lower, the water darkening, two people from incompatible worlds choosing to build something new together. 1 year after that Christmas Eve, the change was undeniable. Legitimate businesses thrived. Illegal operations shrank steadily, sold off or shut down. His reputation shifted slowly, grudgingly, from feared boss to respected investor. Community leaders spoke his name without hesitation. His presence opened doors instead of closing them. It wasn't clean. It wasn't simple. But it was real. Their relationship remained work. They fought. They negotiated. They chose each other daily. There were no illusions of perfection. Only intention. 14 months after Christmas Eve, on a cold February evening, they stood outside the mission again, after dinner service. Snow fell lightly. Their breath fogged the air. Rogelio was nervous in a way Minnie had never seen. He shifted his weight, cleared his throat. I'm not proposing, he said quickly. Not yet. She laughed softly. Okay. He handed her a small box. Inside lay a pendant. A musical note intertwined with a compass rose. Music is you, he said. The compass is me. You're my true north. It wasn't a promise of forever. It was a promise of direction. Every day, he continued, voice steady now, I'm going to choose you. Choose us. Choose the man I'm becoming because of you. Minnie's eyes filled with tears. She turned so he could fasten it around her neck. The most powerful act of love, she said quietly, is the daily choice to show up, be honest, and do the work. They stood there in the cold, warmth radiating between them. They had chosen love despite odds, obstacles, fear, and flaws. Love required courage, not the absence of fear. Transformation proved to be a journey, not a finish line. Loving someone meant seeing them fully and choosing them anyway. Vulnerability was strength, not weakness. The right person inspired growth, not just comfort. Love was action, repeated daily. Control had no place in it. Redemption demanded effort, but it was always possible. The right love did not complete you. It revealed you. What Minnie did on Christmas Eve was choose him with open eyes and a steady heart. What Rogelio craved was not seduction or power. It was the version of himself reflected back through her belief. The invitation was simple. Look at your own walls. Ask what they protect and what they cost. Recognize that change is possible, but only when chosen daily. The love worth craving is not easy. It is deep, honest, transformative. It asks courage every single day. And it shows itself in small moments. Each sunrise over Lake Michigan. Each shared meal served. Each quiet decision to choose each other again. Thank you, truly, thank you for spending these moments with me. Every time you watch, every time you listen, every time you allow these characters to touch your heart, you give life to this channel. Your support is the reason these stories continue to breathe. We're on a journey together, one built on love, heartbreak, healing, and resilience. And now, we're reaching for a new milestone, 10,000 subscribers. It's a big dream, but it's a dream we can reach together. If you've been enjoying these stories, if you've ever felt seen, moved, comforted, or inspired by them, please take a moment to subscribe if you haven't already. Your subscription isn't just a number, it's a message that these stories matter, that this little storytelling family is growing, and that we're building something beautiful here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for staying. And thank you for being part of this journey. Let's reach 10,000, side by side.